I think I was being followed home from work. I've tried to convince myself that I was just being paranoid that night, but the details just don't sit right with me. I work the late shift at a warehouse and I usually clock out at around 11:15 p.m. The drive home takes about 20 minutes. It's mostly empty roads, long stretches of highway, and barely any traffic that late at night. The night started like any other. I pulled out of the parking lot, and as I did, I noticed a dark sedan leave a few seconds after me. I didn't think anything of it at the time. A few other employees leave around the same time, so it didn't seem unusual. About 5 minutes into the drive, I switched lanes to pass a slow truck. And almost immediately, the sedan switched lanes too. That's when I first noticed it. Still, I told myself it was probably nothing. We were heading in the same direction. It happens. But then, I took an early right turn that I normally don't take. I honestly don't even know why I did it. Maybe something in my gut made me curious. Maybe I just wanted to see what the car behind me would do. A few seconds later, the sedan turned too. That's when my stomach tightened. I kept driving and decided to test it without making it obvious. I turned left into a quiet residential area, then another right, and then another left. None of those were on my normal route home, and every single time, those headlights followed. They didn't speed up, they didn't fall back, they just stayed at the same steady distance behind me. At that point, my heart was pounding hard enough that I could feel it in my throat. I kept glancing at the rearview mirror, trying to get a good look at the driver. The windows were too dark. Every time I slowed down just a little to see if they would pass me, they slowed down too. That's when I knew one thing for sure. I was not going straight home. Instead of heading toward my neighborhood, I turned toward a 24-hour gas station about 10 minutes away. It's one of those places that's always brightly lit, and there are usually at least a few people around, even late at night. As soon as I pulled into the entrance, the sedan slowed down like it might follow me in, but it didn't. It kept driving straight past the station. I parked near the front doors under the brightest lights and just sat there pretending to check my phone. My hands were shaking, and I kept replaying the last 10 minutes in my head. Maybe it was just a coincidence. Maybe they lived nearby. Maybe I was just overthinking everything. About 5 minutes later, while I was still sitting there, I saw the same dark sedan drive slowly past the gas station again. But this time, it was coming from the opposite direction. It didn't turn in, it didn't stop. It just rolled past slowly, almost crawling, like whoever was inside was checking to see if I was still there. That's when the fear really hit me. They hadn't just continued on their way, they had turned around. I stayed parked there for another 15 minutes until a couple of other cars pulled in for gas. When I finally left, I took a completely different route home, one that loops around and adds an extra 10 minutes. I checked my mirrors the entire drive. The sedan never showed up again. I got home safely that night, but I barely slept. The next evening at work, when my shift ended, I walked out to the parking lot and instinctively scanned the area. At first, I didn't see the sedan, and honestly, I felt kind of stupid for even looking. But then, as I was unlocking my car, I noticed a dark vehicle parked 2 rows over. Same shape, same tinted windows. Now I know, it could have been any car, but the moment I looked in its direction, the engine turned on, the headlights flicked up, and the car slowly pulled out of the parking spot. I didn't wait to see where it was going. I got into my car, locked the doors, and sat there. The sedan drove past my row slowly, not fast, not aggressively. Just slow enough that I felt the driver was looking at me through the window. Then it turned and exited the parking lot. I didn't drive straight home that night either. I waited until a few co-workers left first, and then I followed behind a group of cars for a while before eventually splitting off. I haven't seen that sedan since, at least not that I've noticed. But after that night, I've changed my routine completely. Different routes home, different exits many times. Eventually, I even asked my manager if I could switch shifts. Maybe it really was just a coincidence. Maybe the same car just happened to be leaving work the same time as me 2 nights in a row. There's one thing I can't stop thinking about. Whoever was in that car turned around after I pulled into that gas station, and the very next night, they were already sitting in my work parking lot. If I hadn't trusted my instincts that first night, I would have driven straight home. And that's the part that still kicks me up sometimes, wondering if they were trying to figure out where I live. I spend a lot of time hiking. There is one rule you should always follow in the woods. Never answer someone that you can't see. I started hiking after the accident. Before that, life always felt like something I was preparing for. Work for the weekend, save for the future. Wait for the moment that things would finally matter. But when a 2-ton vehicle slides across a yellow line towards you, you learn something fast. The future isn't guaranteed. So I started hiking. Not the casual kind where you walk up a paved trail and take pictures. I mean the kind where the path fades and you actually have to pay attention. Roots under your boots, wind through the trees, the smell of damp soil. Out there, being present stops being philosophical, it becomes survival. That morning, the trail was quiet. Late fall. Cold enough that every step made the leaves crunch like brittle paper. I was about 2 miles in when I noticed the marks. At first, I thought they were deer dragging through the leaves, but when I got closer, the pattern didn't make sense. They weren't hoof prints. It looked like something had been dragged across the forest floor. I followed them without really thinking about it. They led to a tree. About chest height on the trunk were gouges, deep ones, long vertical slashes running almost 2 feet down the bark. The wood underneath was fresh and pale. I spent enough time in the woods to know the unusual explanations. Bear-clawed trees sometimes. Deer rub their antlers when they shed velvet. This wasn't that. The marks were too straight, too evenly spaced, and they were higher than I would expect for most animals around here. I stood there for a minute staring at them. The woods had gone quiet, not a peaceful quiet, the other kind. The kind where you suddenly notice that there are no birds. That's when I heard something. A voice. Soft, almost like someone calling from far away. Hey, I froze. There's one rule everyone who spends time in the woods learns eventually. Don't answer voices that you can't see. People get lost that way. Sometimes it's animals mimicking sounds. Sometimes it's just your brain messing with echoes. Either way, responding is how you end up deeper in the woods than you meant to be. So I didn't answer. I just turned around and started walking back the way I came. At least, I thought I did. A few moments later, I heard the voice again. Closer this time. Hey, over here. I stopped. The strange part wasn't the voice. The strange part was the direction it was coming from. Behind me. Which should have meant I was moving away from it. The sound was getting louder. I kept walking. My brain kept telling me the same thing. You're heading back. You're going the right way. But another part of me started noticing things. Trees I didn't recognize. A fallen log I definitely hadn't stepped over earlier. Then the voice again, right behind me now. Hey! Loud enough that I finally felt it in my chest. That's when something clicked. My mind kept insisting I was walking back the way I came, but my body had been slowly turning, step by step, without me even realizing it. I wasn't walking away from the sound. I was walking toward it. I turned around. Nothing. Just trees. But about 20 yards ahead of me, carved into another trunk, were the same marks. Long gouges, 3 lines, deep enough that pieces of bark were scattered at the base like wood shavings. And the drag marks, they started right below it, leading deeper into the woods. Behind me, the voice whispered again. Hey. I don't remember deciding to run. I just remember suddenly being on the trail, moving as fast as I could. Leaves exploding under my boots. The voice followed for a while, not yelling, just calling. Always behind me. I didn't stop running until I saw the road through the trees. Grey asphalt cutting through the forest like a lifeline. I stumbled out onto the gravel shoulder and bent over, hands on my knees, lungs burning. For a few seconds, I just stared at the empty road. I had made it. The woods behind me were quiet again. Normal quiet. Wind in the branches, distant crows. Then something moved behind me. I spun around. A man stepped out from between the trees about 15 yards down the shoulder. I hadn't heard him approach. No footsteps, no leaves crunching, nothing. He looked normal enough. Hiking jacket, small day pack. But he stopped when he saw me, like my reaction surprised him. "Hey," he said. "You okay?" I straightened up slowly. "Yeah," I said. "I think so." He walked a little closer, studying my face. "You look like you just saw a ghost." I glanced back towards the trailhead. The woods were still. "I heard something in there," I said. A voice. The man nodded slowly, not surprised, not skeptical, just acknowledging it. Then he stepped a little closer and lowered his voice. "You should be careful out here." His eyes stayed locked onto mine. "There are things in these woods that you shouldn't respond to." Something about the way he said it made my stomach twist. Not like advice, more like a reminder, or a warning meant for someone who already knew better. "Did you hear it too?" I asked. But he didn't answer, because when I looked up again, he was gone. No footsteps, no branches moving, just the empty road and the trees standing still like they had never opened for anyone at all. I stood there for a long time before getting into my car. Sometimes I still think about that day, and one thing keeps bothering me. If he came out of the woods, why didn't I ever hear him coming? Someone tried my door handle every night at 2:17 a.m. I never used to be paranoid about locking my door. I live alone in a small rented place at the end of a quiet street where nothing unusual ever really happens. It's the kind of neighborhood where people know their neighbors when nights are silent except for the occasional car passing by. It's why the first time I heard the sound, I convinced myself it was nothing. I woke up randomly in the middle of the night to a soft metallic click. At first I thought it was part of a dream, but then I heard it again. A slow, careful rattle. It took me a second to realize what it was. Someone was pressing down on my front door handle. I grabbed my phone and checked the time. 2:17 a.m. I froze in bed, staring into the darkness, barely breathing as I listened. The handle moved again, slowly, gently, like someone was testing it, trying not to make any noise. After a few seconds, it stopped. No footsteps, no voices, just silence. The next morning, I told myself it was probably the wind, or maybe the metal shifting because of the temperature. Deep down, I knew exactly what that sound was. The second night, I was awake when it happened. I remember checking the time on my phone, 2:16 a.m., before setting it down on the nightstand. Exactly 1 minute later, click, rattle. This time, it was slower, more deliberate. My heart started pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Whoever was outside wasn't trying to force the door open. They weren't aggressively shaking the handle or trying to break in. They were calmly testing it, like they were hoping that maybe tonight I forgot to lock it. I didn't move. I didn't turn on any lights. I just lay there completely still, staring at the ceiling until the sound finally stopped. By the third night, I knew it wasn't random. I turned off all the lights in the house and sat quietly in the living room. Watching the front door. When the clock hit 2:17 a.m., the handle slowly pressed down, right in front of my eyes. The door shifted slightly in the cold frame. The lock held. My entire body went cold. After a few seconds, I forced myself to stand up and look through the peephole. And that's when I realized something that made the whole situation even worse. Whoever was outside wasn't standing directly in front of the door. They were standing slightly to the side. The next day, I installed a small motion camera facing the front door. I barely slept that night. Then, on the fourth night, at exactly 2:17 a.m., my phone buzzed with a notification. Motion detected. My hands were shaking as I opened the camera app. The footage showed a man in a dark hoodie standing beside my door. His face wasn't fully visible, but I could clearly see his mouth. He was smiling, not nervously, not angrily, just calmly, like this was routine for him. He gently tried the door handle twice. Then he leaned closer to the door for a moment, like he was listening. After that, he stepped back and walked out of frame. I showed the footage to the police the next day. Once they saw it, they actually took it seriously. They increased patrols in the area for a while. After that, it stopped. No more rattling, no more visits at 2:17 a.m. Months have passed from now and technically I'm safe, but I still wake up almost every night around that same time. Check the clock as it changes from 2:16 to 2:17. The door hasn't moved again, but I can't shake the feeling that whoever that man was, he wasn't in a hurry to get inside. It felt like he was patient. He was waiting for one small mistake. And sometimes when I step outside in the evening, I catch myself scanning the street, half expecting the man in the dark hoodie standing at the corner, not looking at the houses, just looking at mine. I was lost in my own head. A while ago, I hit my head badly enough that I lost consciousness for almost an entire day. When I finally woke up, the first thing I realized was that I had no memory of the previous 2 days. That alone was unsettling, but the memory that stayed with me, the one that still bothers me, was what I experienced when I was unconscious. Because for hours, I wasn't really there. My body apparently moved. It spoke to people. It even opened its eyes at times, according to the doctors. But I wasn't inside it. I couldn't feel anything. No pain, no warmth, no sense of time passing. There was just this vast, cold nothingness stretching out around me. It wasn't darkness like when you close your eyes, and it wasn't a dream either. It was worse than that. It felt like a void, a place where I simply didn't exist. And yet somehow, there was still sounds. They were faint and distorted, like voices traveling through thick water. I couldn't understand any words, just fragments of sound, whispers, murmurs, echoes. They would drift close to me, and then fade away again. Sometimes it felt like someone was trying to speak. Other times it sounded like multiple voices layered on top of each other, all blending into this strange, distant noise. A few times, I thought I heard my own name, but it didn't sound normal. It sounded stretched out, slow and heavy, like someone calling to me from behind thick walls, or from somewhere very far away. I couldn't respond. I couldn't move. All I could do was exist in this empty space and listen. I felt like I was trapped between two worlds. The void was pulling me downward into nothing, while those distant sounds were trying to pull me up towards reality. My body was reacting to these sounds somehow. The doctors later said I would occasionally move or respond slightly, but I wasn't controlling any of it. I was just a passenger, watching my own life continue without me. Time didn't exist there. Minutes felt like hours, and then suddenly, hours would collapse into nothing. I don't know how long I drifted in that place. All I remember is the overwhelming feeling of being completely severed from reality. It honestly felt like I had been split into two pieces. One part of me trapped in the endless void, and another part still connected to the world. When I finally woke up, everything felt wrong. Voices sounded distant, like people were speaking from across a long hallway. Faces looked familiar, but slightly off. Even ordinary objects felt strange, like the world had rearranged itself while I was gone. What scared me the most wasn't the injury. It wasn't even the fact that I had lost most of my memory. It was the realization that my body had kept functioning while my consciousness had slowly disappeared. I wasn't scared of death. I was scared of not being there, of knowing that my mind could vanish while my body continued on autopilot. Even now, the memory still haunts me. Sometimes when I lie in bed and close my eyes, I swear I can hear those faint whispers again, the distant sound of voices trying to reach me. And every once in a while, I feel the same sensation creeping back, like I'm slowly slipping towards that empty place again. A space with no walls, no light, no ground. My body exists, but I'm not inside it. And the thought that it could happen again at any moment is something I still struggle to shake. Because after that fall, I realized something that I had never thought about before. Consciousness is fragile. The line between being here and disappearing completely is much thinner than we like to believe. And somewhere between being awake and being gone, the void is still there, waiting.